Okay, so today we're going deep on a dynamic that honestly kind of blew my mind when I first heard about it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about an INFJ male
Okay.
married to an ESTJ female.
Interesting combo.
Yeah, and get this, raising 5 kids,
Yeah.
all in the From Yeshiva world. I
Like,
mean,
wow, that's a lot to unpack right there.
it is. And we got a ton of questions from you guys about this one. Like, a lot of people are really fascinated by this.
Not surprising.
Yeah, and honestly, so am I. It's like, can anyone outside the situation even wrap their heads around it?
Right.
So for those who need a quick personality type 101 INFJ, that's your deep feeler, super intuitive, big picture kind of person.
Exactly. And then you've got the ESTJ, very practical, loves structure, action-oriented, all about getting things done.
Total opposites, right?
On paper, yeah, you'd think so. But when you put them together,
Nice.
especially in a setting like the From Yeshiva world, well, things get really
And
interesting.
complicated, maybe.
Oh, absolutely. Like, one of the big questions we got was, who has it harder in this kind of setup? The INFJ guy swimming upstream or the ESTJ woman trying to keep everything afloat?
Yeah, I mean, that was like the number one question, right?
Yeah.
Who's got it tougher?
And it makes sense to ask that, right? Because from the outside, it's easy to just see the clashes, the friction. Like you're trying to get your kids ready for those school interviews, right?
Those be
Big deal in the yeshiva world.
huge.
And you're probably coming at it from totally different angles.
Oh, yeah. My wife, she's all about making sure the kids have their benching down pat, making a good impression on the Rebbe.
Makes sense.
Right. But me, I'm more worried about, like, do they get why we're even doing this? Like, the meaning behind it all? The middos?
That's so INFJ of you,
Yeah.
focusing on the emotional and spiritual core of the experience.
But, yeah, it definitely leads to some interesting conversations at home.
I bet. So it sounds like sometimes you guys feel like you're almost working against each other, even though you both obviously want what's best for the kids.
Yeah, it's like she's so focused on what she thinks the school wants. I'm like, hey, what about what our kid needs?
And that, I think, is where the whole pressure cooker of the From Yeshiva world really comes into play. It's not just about two different personalities. It's about two different ways of relating to this very specific cultural context.
Totally. Like, I sometimes feel like my wife, she prioritizes fitting in, like doing things the way they're supposed to be done, even if it means, I don't know, maybe stifling some of our kids' individuality a little.
It's that ESTJ drive for order, for
Yeah.
following the established rules. It's not about being controlling. It's about creating a sense of security, of belonging within that community.
Yeah, and I get that. But me, I'm always pushing back on that a little. Like I want to make sure my kids feel free to be themselves, to express their own unique spark.
Absolutely. That's that classic INFJ championing of individuality and emotional well-being. You're not afraid to question the norms, to advocate for what feels right, even if it ruffles some feathers.
And let me tell you, it definitely ruffles some feathers
I
sometimes.
bet. And that probably leads to some interesting discussions, not just about the kids, but about, well, everything.
Oh, for sure. Like my wife is very much cut to the chase, get things done.
Yeah.
She's not really one for long, drawn-out conversations, especially about feelings.
Very ESTJ.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
me, I need to process things, to understand the emotions behind everything. And if I don't get that, I feel like I'm just going through the motions?
I totally get that. So you're craving that deep emotional connection, that shared understanding, while she's more focused on practical solutions and taking action.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, like, I can literally be writing poetry in my head about something, and she's already 3 steps ahead, organizing the carpool, making lists.
That's a perfect illustration of how different your approaches to the world are. It's no wonder communication can be a challenge sometimes.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes a lot of people wonder, like, is this even sustainable? Who has it harder?
Mm.
Is it me feeling constantly misunderstood or her feeling like she's carrying the weight of the world, and maybe even getting overwhelmed by my intensity sometimes?
That's the million-dollar question, right? And I think it's important to remember that there's no simple answer, no winner or loser in this. You're both facing unique challenges, challenges that are deeply rooted in your personalities and the cultural expectations you're navigating.
It's like I might feel unseen or unheard in a community that prioritizes fitting in,
Mhm.
while she might feel this immense pressure to maintain that perfect image, that perfect from family.
Absolutely. And both of those experiences are valid. It's not about comparing suffering. It's about understanding the different ways you each experience the world and this relationship.
And then there's that whole feeling of, like nobody gets it. Like this dynamic, this INFJ guy, ESTJ woman in the From Yeshiva world, it's so specific.
It is very unique, I'll give you that.
Right. Like, is there anyone else out there who can even relate?
Well, on the surface, maybe not. But here's the thing. Even though your situation is unique, the core challenges you're facing, they're actually pretty universal. Like, every couple has to figure out how to navigate different personalities, different communication styles, different ways of approaching life, right? And that's true whether you're in the From Yeshiva world or, living on a commune in California.
So what you're saying is even though our situation feels super specific, there are still lessons here that anyone can apply to their own relationships.
Absolutely. Like recognizing that your partner's way of showing love might be different from yours, or that sometimes you need to meet in the middle to compromise, even if it means stepping outside your comfort zone a little.
That's huge.
Yeah.
So I guess what we're really saying is this INFJ ESTJ pairing, especially in the From Yeshiva world, it's not going to be easy, but it doesn't have to be a disaster either.
Exactly. It's all about finding the balance, leveraging each other's strengths. Like your wife's action-oriented nature combined with your visionary thinking, that can be a real powerhouse.
It's like she keeps things moving, and I
Right.
make sure we're moving in the right direction.
Exactly. And as long as you keep communicating, keep trying to understand each other's perspectives, and keep remembering that you're on the same team, well, then you've got a real shot at making this work.
That's really encouraging, actually. So for all you folks out there listening who are in this dynamic or maybe know someone who is, just remember, it's not about who has it harder or who's right or wrong. It's about working together to create something beautiful, something that honors both of your strengths and your unique quirks.
And don't be afraid to ask for help, whether it's from a therapist or rabbi or even just a friend who gets it. Sometimes having that outside perspective can make all the difference.
Totally. Okay, one last thought before we wrap this up, and this one's for all the parents out there, no matter your personality type. We've talked a lot about balancing individual needs with community expectations.
Mhm.
But what happens as your kids grow up, start making their own choices? How do you navigate that as parents, especially when you have such different approaches to, well, everything?
That's a great question. Like, will you encourage your kids to follow the path that's laid out for them or to forge their own way, even if it means going against the grain? And how do you make those decisions as a couple when your instincts are pulling you in opposite directions? It's something to think about for sure.
Food for thought, for sure. All right, that's it for today's deep dive. Keep those questions coming, and we'll keep exploring the messy, complicated, and ultimately fascinating world of relationships.
See you next time.
Bye.